Chapter 1. Anticipation in Wajir. The air in Wajir buzzed with anticipation. It was the season of dust, and the sun beat down with a fierce intensity. Hodan, barely a teenager, felt a thrill course through her. The school holidays were finally here. This year, the trip to her grandmother's village promised to be special. She and her sister, Naima, chatted excitedly. They were inseparable, two bright birds ready to take flight. Naima, with her infectious laughter and quick wit, was the mischievous one. Hodan, quieter and more contemplative, treasured their bond. The thought of weeks spent in the countryside, away from the confines of their small town, filled them with a sense of unbridled joy. The days leading up to their departure were a whirlwind of packing and preparations. Hodan helped her mother pack bags filled with dates, maize flour, and fragrant spices. She carefully folded her best dress, a vibrant fabric that her grandmother had gifted her on her last visit. At night, under the vast expanse of the star-dusted sky, Hodan and Naima whispered secrets. They spoke of their dreams for the future, of becoming teachers, of escaping the confines of their small town. They held on to their dreams with the same fervor that they held on to each other. Chapter 2. Whispers of Purification. The journey to her grandmother's village was long and arduous. It was a journey Hodan had undertaken many times before, but this time a strange unease lingered in the air. The usual joyful chatter of young girls was replaced by a hushed silence, their laughter now echoing with an undercurrent of fear. For in this remote region, the ancient tradition loomed, casting a long shadow over their innocent lives. The women spoke in low tones, their faces etched with worry. Hodan noticed the way her mother's eyes would dart nervously towards her and Naima. A sense of foreboding began to creep into her heart. One evening, huddled around a crackling fire, Hodan overheard her mother and aunts whispering about a purification ceremony. The words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. Hodan didn't understand what it meant, but she felt a knot of fear tighten in her stomach. When she asked her mother, she was met with a dismissive wave of the hand and a stern silence. That night, under the vast emptiness of the night sky, Hodan and Naima clung to each other. Their laughter was gone, replaced by a shared and unspoken fear. Chapter 3. The Scar That Silence Etched. The day of the purification ceremony dawned hot and airless. A stifling silence blanketed the village. The air was thick with a strange tension that made Hodan's skin crawl. She and Naima were woken before sunrise and led to a makeshift hut on the outskirts of the village. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of herbs and incense. Several older women, their faces etched with a severity that chilled Hodan to the bone, sat waiting. What happened next was a blur of pain, terror, and confusion. The terror was palpable, another chilling dread that seeped into their bones. Whispers of crude instruments and unhygienic practices painted a grim picture in their minds. The blades, rusty and unsterilized, become symbols of fear, their sharp edges promising pain and potential harm. Hodan remembered the sharp, searing agony that tore through her body, the feeling of blood trickling down her legs, her bodies exposed and vulnerable. The hands that touched them were rough and unwashed, and the blade glinting ominously in the dim light. She remembered Naima's screams, her own muffled cries swallowed by the suffocating heat of the hut. Naima's cries echoed through the village, her pleas for mercy drowned out by the stoic faces of the women performing the ritual. Hodan, her heart pounding in her chest, could only watch in horror as her sister's life is forever altered. When it was over, they were left lying on the dirt floor, their bodies racked with pain and their spirits broken. The women spoke of tradition, of purity, of their duty, but all Hodan felt was a profound sense of violation. It was a wound that ran deeper than the blood that stained her clothes. It was a scar etched in silence. Chapter 4. A Wound Deeper Than Blood. The days that followed were a blur of pain and fever. Naima, her usually vibrant spirit dimmed, slipped in and out of consciousness. Hodan, her own body racked with pain, could do nothing but watch helplessly as her beloved sister's life slowly ebbed away. The infection, a consequence of the crude instruments and unsanitary conditions, had taken root. When Naima breathed her last, her hand clasped tightly in Hodan's, the world seemed to hold its breath. The silence that followed was deafening. Hodan felt a scream rise in her throat, a primal howl of pain and despair, but no sound came out. It was as if the agony had choked her voice, leaving her in a silent, suffocating void. She was left with a wound that ran deeper than blood, a gaping hole in her heart where Naima's laughter used to be. Chapter 5, Bound by Tradition's Chains. Hodan carried the weight of Naima's absence like a stone in her gut. Her grief was a constant companion, a shadow that followed her everywhere. Her family, steeped in the traditions that had claimed Naima's life, offered no solace. They spoke of fate, of God's will, their words empty and hollow to Hodan's ears. One evening as Hodan walked home from the shop, a shadowy figure emerged. His touch, rough and unwelcome, sent a chill down her spine. Hodan, still reeling from the trauma of the purification ceremony and the loss of Naima, was too weak and vulnerable to resist. She was trapped in a nightmare, her body violated once again in the name of tradition. Weeks later, the first stirrings of life within her womb confirmed her worst fears. She later learned his identity and was forced to marry him, her abuser. Tradition, it seemed, had her bound in its chains, yet her spirit remained unbroken. Chapter 6, A Spirit Unbroken. Hodan's life became a prison. She was a captive in her